And my New Year's resolution that year was to be more confident, right, in the workplace. To be more, it was literally, it wasn't like about more money, it wasn't like more holidays or anything like that. It was to be more confident.
What I believe happens is that there's a load of bullshit thoughts that we start to hang on to and attach to that take us away from that. Peter,
Benjamin
there's only two people that call me Benjamin, Yassine and my mother.
and me.
This is the Confidence Podcast, guys. This is the podcast you want to be listening to if you struggle with two things in your life, confidence and fear. I think they tread a line that's very, very closely intertwined. And on today's session, we're going to be talking about three main constructs that are going to massively help you when it comes to creating the confidence or not having to create the confidence that you need in your life to massively accelerate your business, have better relationships, to just do the things that you want to do and not let confidence be the reason that you're being held back, slowing down, playing small ever again. Now, if you give this the gravity that it deserves, I think you're going to get a lot of value from it. And I just wanted to share, actually, I just got back from speaking over in Toronto. So I'm officially an international speaker, Peter.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, I called you Peter. Don't know why. And it's just Peter's on
Getting me back
Monday.
to Benjamin.
Yeah. Peter actually rings me up, and sometimes he calls me like playground bully names that trigger me. I got invited to go and speak at, believe it or not, an eyelash conference. Pete, an eyelash conference. Yeah.
What does that say about you?
I don't know. I just massively, maybe it's just the
You're in touch.
attraction. Yeah,
Yeah.
the feminine side, the strong, grounded, masculine side. Anyway, in an arena where it's all about perfectionism, looking your best, trying to look really good, I went there and shared a story around confidence, which I had ladies coming up to me crying afterwards. I had people sharing with me that it was the best talk of the day because of how it made them feel, and people were actually being real. It was really transformational. And I wanted to share the same thing for men. And I think sometimes even Pete and I were talking before we did this session, and we said, like, guys don't resonate with the word confidence, which is kind of BS, really, because guys do feel unconfident too.
Yeah. I when you were just talking there, I was like, okay, what stories have I got around this, around confidence? And I can recall back to when I was, how old was I? 17? Yeah, 17, 18. So I just got my first like real job working in corporate at that age. And there was, how many people in there? There's about 150 people in that company. And I was really shit scared. Like there's a lot of like I'm a new face, a young boy in a big corporate world, never stepped foot in a place like that before, and I was really scared. And I remember it was coming up to like Christmas sort of time, and New Year's resolutions were coming up, right? And this is when I used to really hardcore on like New Year's resolutions. And my New Year's resolution that year was to be more confident, right, in the workplace. To be more, it was literally, it wasn't like about more money, it wasn't like more holidays or anything like that. It was to be more confident. And I remember setting myself little tasks throughout like the weeks and the months during that year to become more confident just in the workplace. And it was just like, right, I'm going to go to the toilet even though I don't need to, because I know that I have to walk throughout the whole of the office past everyone. It was just like this walk, I remember this corridor, and you have to walk a really long corridor. You got to walk past everyone. And I remember doing it more times than I needed to do it, just so I could become a little bit more confident in that arena. Because every time I'd go down, I would get stopped and people would talk to me. Lo and behold, it worked.
Yeah, you did well there, did you? You did well in that company.
Yeah. I did super well in that company. Yeah.
And I think even on Sunday, speaking about just chit chat with people, I found that was really difficult because my tendency in a conference is to not really chat to people, and I found it really difficult to have a common ground with lash artists. Like, I was speaking to the people I kind of knew, and I had to really gather a lot of courage to go and speak to people. And that, I think a lot of people, that's where a lot of their confidence struggles show up, in small talk, in going up to people and opening conversations. And that's often where the biggest growth can be for your company, for your business, even if you're dating. Like, if you're a guy and you're struggling with dating, it's like the thing that you have to do is have uncomfortable conversations with people you don't know when you're first starting out. I used to thrive in that situation. I'm an extrovert, so it actually came really easy to me. But I found myself in business not wanting to go up to people and have conversations about random stuff. That was something that I really struggled with. But today's, let's get straight into this, because I think there's 3 key powerful shifts that you can make around being confident, being more assertive, being more courageous. Now, we're going to headline first on what the 3 things are. And then what we're going to do is we're going to navigate into each one and have a conversation about it. And the 3 headline shifts that I believe that you need to make in order to be more confident are, first of all, acknowledging that you might actually not need confidence. It's something that you've been chasing, but you don't actually need. And we're going to go into, obviously, just that thought is quite freeing in itself. I'm going to share you my story, but you can share his as well. Self-confidence. Like, I ask people all the time in the fitness space, how do you create confidence? If I was to say to you, because like, say you want to go and create a bigger bicep, you know pretty much what you need to do. You go and do some dumbbell curls, you go and do some push-ups, you go and do some all sorts of stuff, and you can build a bigger bicep. But like, when it comes to psychological strength, how do you build confidence, self-confidence? And it's actually through self-restraint. Now, this was a very, very freeing concept for me, and I believe it will be for you too, because it means you don't actually have to be anything. It's something that you do. And the final one is that you are already confident. Now, I look at my 2-year-old daughter, and I look when Pete's sharing stories with Thor and his son, is that these kids at 2 and all the way up till about 7, they're naturally happy and confident. Now, what I believe happens is that there's a load of bullshit thoughts that we start to hang on to and attach to that take us away from that. And when we become very, very good at seeing those thoughts, inquiring about those thoughts, we change massively. And that's such a help.
Just on the thoughts, that's like your thoughts are the story that you tell yourself, right? So I actually haven't read his book yet. There's a really Steve Chandler's got a great book on a story of you, right? Which I've got on my shelf, and I'm like looking at it. I know I need to read that, but I know the power of the stories that you tell yourself. It's your own beliefs, right? And then if you start having those beliefs really early on about maybe not being confident, then that's a story that you carry with you.
Yeah, even just the story of you and how to write a better one. Sometimes the title in a book is good enough. It's like, yeah, actually, do you know what? It's just a story I've created. And what we're going to do on the podcast today, I'm actually going to give you 4 questions that you can use. By the way, there is a document that we're going to go through as we're going through this session, just to give it some structure. If you want this, it's got some activities in there. It's got some other stuff that you can read about confidence and courage. Just head on over to the show notes, and there will be a link that you can just click on, and it'll take you straight to the document. It's worth its weight in gold. It took me ages to make, and it's a training that we give our awakened men, and it's super helpful. So let's get in on the first one. What happens if you didn't actually need confidence? So this is a thought that came up for me. I started public speaking at 23. I invited everyone to a Facebook event that was where I was going to be doing an in-person talk, and I thought if a couple of people show up, I've told this story on the podcast before, 70 people turned up. I was super scared, super mouth, cotton mouth, sweaty palms, mints in my words, shaking, and I realized I had to speak about health because I was so passionate about it. But then what happened was, I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to do some public speaking, I better go and get some public speaking training, because I want this to go away. I want this feeling of like nervousness, anxiousness, forgetting my words, being shaky on stage. I wanted it to go away. So I invested a huge amount in professional public speaking, like a huge amount. It's not a small amount, because I felt like if I just outlearned all of these things, I'd be confident. I stood on a stage on Sunday in front of 150 ladies, and I still felt the same. I still felt exactly the same. Now, yes, for sure, I'm way, way better than I've ever been. But this is the thing, is that what happens if I was to tell you you could have everything that you ever wanted in your life whilst feeling a little insecure and scared? And this is the thing, is like, I still really, really feel that, is that I've just become very, very okay with feeling like that. Instead of trying to push it away, I shouldn't feel like this, I shouldn't feel anxious, I shouldn't feel nervous. I just like, yeah, this is the reason I feel like this, is because it's important to me. That makes sense, Pete?
Yeah, it does make sense. So you've become very aware of when you feel uncomfortable and scared, and you lean into it.
Yeah, I just, instead of it becoming like a meta fear, like, I'm not only am I scared of the actual event, I'm scared of the fear itself. I just recognize, my belly is there's a couple of butterflies in my belly. I even went on stage and I said, listen, by the way, I'm really nervous. I've been doing this for 10 years. My palms arms are sweaty, my mouth's dry, I'm worried about what you're going to say, practicing radical honesty. Stole that from Pete, actually. And just settled the audience down. And like some of the ladies coming up to me after say, "Oh my God, I couldn't believe it. Like, you've been doing this for so long. You're still scared." Like, I've never put myself out there to do it because I feel scared. And I was like, yeah, so maybe this confidence thing, and I wrote this down, is that the absence of self-criticism isn't confidence. Because what I think happens is we try to create confidence by going, I'll perfect that much that I won't criticize myself. I won't put myself down. I won't hold myself back. But it still showed up. And I think that's a bullshit equation to chase, because when, as guys, we're like, okay, when I stop giving myself a hard time, that's when I'm confident. But I've never stopped giving myself a hard time. I've just become way better at building a relationship with my inner critic.
Yeah, and also understanding and also just being really self-aware of when that inner critic comes up and how to handle it. So you've built the skills, you've built a skill set there to be able to handle the inner critic and the dark side and the fear when it comes up.
Yeah, I think we're quite good in the business partnership with this. Like when we've got things on in the day, like I'll say to Pete last week, I said, "Hey, Pete, you've got Leo, you've got it's Daddy Day. As much as you've got stuff on your plate, if he doesn't go to sleep, just cut yourself some slack." And it's not naturally like our own inner critic can go, Mike, I've had these days when I've got Effie and Indy, and I'm like, I've got planned what I'm going to do as 100, and I get 10 out of 100 done. It just, the inner critic comes up. And I think that what I've noticed is I've just, like something I said, I got this from your scene, is being able to cut yourself infinite slack. And that was really helpful for me, because when I cut myself infinite slack, it's not that I don't get work done. It's just that I recover way, way quicker when I make a mistake.
Yeah, I like that.
And then, so the second part of this, like thinking about what happens if you didn't need confidence. Well, if you think about this, is that sometimes we place confidence or hold it to ransom at the end of something. So what we do is we say, I'm confident because, and so I did this. So I want to kind of share a little bit about what happened in my late 20s, is that I said I was confident because I had the car, because I had the relationship, the wife, because I had a successful business, because people used to say nice things about me. And then in like the divorce, the business went a bit topsy-turvy. I had to sell my cars. I had to, didn't move into my own house. All these things happened at the end of my 20s. All of these external things, which I'd say I'm confident because, literally went away overnight. And I was on very shaky ground when that happened, because I said I was confident because of all these things, and then they were gone. And I was like, holy shit. And that was me. I remember getting on a plane feeling very, very upset, actually crying on the plane, going out to see a mentor in the States. And the first thing he said to me when I landed was like, where does confidence and happiness come from? It was like he knew exactly what to say in the car. This was at 3 a.m. And I remember he's like, it doesn't come from, it's not an external job, it's an internal job. But I had put all of my confidence outside of myself, like literally like Harry Potter, about Voldemort and the Horcruxes, like 7 different things I'd placed my confidence in, and they were getting destroyed one by one. And that made me realize that I had to do a lot of work on not making confidence an external thing. It needed to be internal. So I learned at the time that confidence is like a 3-step process. It's not I'm confident because, it's not I'll be confident when, because when we say when, we're pushing confidence out into the future. So you might be saying, I'll be confident when I've made my first million or 100 grand or whatever it is. It means that you can't be confident now. So you're always chasing this illusory thing. And because what happens is, and I know you had the same thing, Pete, is like in business, we say, oh, I'll feel much better when, and we get there and we've got a new problem. So we need to make confidence what I would say either non-negotiable or unconditional. It's the same thing for love. And I'm confident, and that's it. And it's just literally like a statement. I am confident, and nothing outside of myself can have an effect on that. Now, this is quite high level thinking, but if you can employ that level of thinking, you're safe for life.
I think a nice exercise around this, because many, many years ago, right, I was trying affirmations many, many years ago, like every morning, right, these affirmations, and they didn't do shit, right? it was for me anyway, it was a load of bollocks. It really didn't work. I was diligent with it as well, right?
I can imagine. Yeah.
I had hardcore discipline around all these affirmations. I am, and this goes back to the beliefs thing that I was saying earlier.
Sorry, I can just imagine this. Sorry, the sudden visual there. Yeah, the morning mirror.
Yeah. But what I did begin to figure out, and did work for me around these beliefs that I began to instill inside of me, was I just went back to a time where like I was confident. Like I remember the time when I did do that, right, and I was confident there. Oh, I remember the time where I did make a bunch of money. I made it there. I remember the time where like I was pretty wise, like in that certain arena. I'd have been classed as an expert, right? So I can be all those things. So it wasn't like I'm just making them up. Like I had past experience with them, even if it was just tiny. And then I worked on that, right? So like the times where I wanted to be more confident. I remember the times when I did step out of my comfort zone and I did that thing. So I know I've got the capabilities and I just worked around that. That being a belief that I'd already done it and I could keep working on that because that helped to change my own beliefs internally.
Yeah.
Did that make sense what I just said?
It does, but I'm going to challenge you, right? Because it's still condition. It's still condition. Like I have done this before, so I can be confident. So what we want to look at actually, and this is there's this even I'm learning as you were talking then, is that I would have done the same thing. It's like, oh, I've spoken on stage before, so I can be confident. But then I'm still feeling as I'm feeling it. So it's just coming back to that. It's unconditional. Then my natural state is confidence. What thought is taking us away from that? We'll come to this in the last part of this session today, and it's really, really helpful because you might be thinking you have to go and do something new. Like the thing about what Pete shared there is that he was relying on past experience. What happens if you need to do something that you've got no reference point for, and then you're like, oh well, I don't feel confident because I've got no experience. But then you're dumbfounded. You're like, oh shit, well, how do I actually feel confident around this? And that is when you have to have unconditional confidence, where it's like there's nothing outside of myself, no past event, no future. I just am confident, and it really does help you. I don't know. Does that make sense? Because I think this is a very nuanced conversation, and if you're listening in, because what we do is we place it in the future, we hold it to ransom over experience. So how can we ever actually like create it if we haven't got that reference point in the past? So this is something that if you slow down and you think to yourself, actually, yeah, sometimes when I'm doing something new, that's when I feel most anxious and scared. And it's actually not confidence we need there, it's courage. There's a very, very distinct difference because fear is often, there's actually a quote down here, fear is peeing your pants. Confidence is doing what needs to be done with wet pants. It's just like, and I think that's what happens is that if you look at confidence, it's a result, not a requirement. Now, when you've often stepped into something new, you're quote unquote shitting yourself and you're going through those awkward feelings, but carrying on anyway, you're often experiencing courage. What happens afterwards is you're like, oh, right, okay, I got through that. That's when confidence shows up. And I think that we have that equation backwards. We think that the confidence is going to arrive before the event, and it never does. Like, I don't know if about you. Do you have that? Have you ever felt confident before something? You're like, oh, I'm shit myself.
No, absolutely not. I was just thinking about when I've done the biggest speaking gigs I've done are with you, Ben.
Actually, I'm going to challenge you there. I think you've done something way more confident. You
No,
stood in
it's
front of a
speaking gigs with, oh yeah, I mean, I have stood in front of a lot of people in my pants.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, dude. Pete. Yeah, I say like
There
standing in
is
front
that,
of some.
yeah.
Yeah, dude. Like, how many people were in those rooms?
Fucking hundreds. The last one was the O2 Arena.
Actually, your story about how you created confidence through bodybuilding is probably quite a timely one. If you want to share that.
Yeah, well, I just forced myself to do it. Some of these things that you're talking about are quite hard for me to grasp because every time there was an uncomfortable situation, I just pushed myself into it and I
But would
built
you?
that resilience muscle over
Yeah.
time.
But did you feel confident at the time, or did you feel just scared?
Scared.
Yeah. I think that's the point I'm trying to make. And maybe it's like, don't want to get lost in the complication, is that we wait for this kind of strong, powerful feeling in the face of fear. It never shows up. It's just literally fear and shitting yourself. So,
Yeah. Even when I competed at the O2 Arena, actually, I'd competed a number of times to get to that position because it was the pros competing, right? And I was fucking shit scared. I remember standing behind the curtain, like ready to go out, and I'm like, although I'm buzzing to get out, I was also like, my gut churning.
yeah.
Yeah, even though I'd done it plenty of times before.
But that's what the point is, right? Most people would label that feeling as not confidence. They'd be like, "Oh my god, because I'm feeling like that, I'm not confident." And like, if you're listening to this, I think male or female, it's just that we often think that that feeling is the reason we're not confident. And I think that having that feeling and simultaneously being able to step into the things that we are very, very scared of is courage. And I think like I actually couldn't do that. I think that for me I actually got to the point where I could have gone on stage. But the thought of doing that, I think I made a bullshit excuse and beat the story up about, yeah, I didn't have the courage to do that. But you shared in Canterbury when we did the talk there about you created muscles to the process of building muscles, and I think this is something that's really, it segues nicely into our next point, that confidence is actually created through self-restraint. So we did some work we spoke about it on the podcast, a guy called Barry Michaels. Now, if you type in Barry Michaels Black Sun Google, he did a talk at Google. The guy is super famous in the world of psychotherapy, and they're about to do a Netflix documentary about him and his partner, they've got 2 books. They work with all Hollywood A-listers, XYZ, and he did a talk about this tool called the Black Sun. Now, what Barry talks about is that confidence is created through self-restraint. Now, I didn't really get this until I started really doing this workshop on confidence, and I was like, oh my God, yeah. So if you think about this, all the things that we naturally gravitate to demonstrate confidence, muscles, relationships, money, things to demonstrate the confidence, they are all created through self-restraint. Now, think about this. When you are trying to demonstrate that you're successful, you're demonstrating that you've got money, you've got a great relationship, that you've got all of these things. If you haven't got self-restraint, if you don't have discipline, you will not have these things. So we think that the actual thing itself demonstrates our success, but I think that there's a deep internal knowing that actually what this demonstrates is I've got the self-restraint to produce success in my life. Like I've seen pictures of Pete when he's in phenomenal shape, and I was like, God, that must have taken some discipline. And I think we have this internal knowing, and when we see someone who's super successful in business, like, gosh, they've put themselves through hell and back to get there, because you know that that's created that. So self-restraint is the ability not to act on impulses, on emotional impulses, to do things that we said we're going to do. There's a really great statement that encapsulates this, is your dreamer must be able to trust your doer. Now, what this means is that you've got the ability to think really, really big, but then take the tiny steps towards making it happen. So like making and keeping promises to yourself. So when Pete was training to be a bodybuilder on stage, he made a promise that he'd go to the gym that day, and he kept that promise, and he obviously kept that promise, and it showed visually. This making sense, dude? I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it did. Yeah, that's self-restraint. I'd never used that word before. I'd always used, I was just damn disciplined.
Yeah.
I just had to build that discipline muscle in so many areas: food, training, practice, mindset. So many areas to be able to get into that condition, to then be able to go and step on stage and so on, and build those muscles.
Even yesterday, Yassine talked about 3 types of discipline. He talked about, I think it was situational discipline, structural discipline, and growth-based discipline, expansive discipline. That's it. And this really, like, especially where I'm at with going in and talking about this stuff at the moment, there's those 3 types of discipline. So that the first one being reactive discipline, it's ability to say no in the moment. So Pete says, "Hey Ben, do you want a beer?" And we have a beer, and he's like, "Do you want the second one?" I know the second one isn't as good as the first. I know it's not good for me. I've already made the decision, but yeah, okay. The ability to say no to the things that aren't good for us moment to moment, that's reactive discipline. The second one is structural discipline. And we talk about this on the Awaken programs all the time, is like command and obey. So you've got commands in your calendar. You've put in your sales times or your prospecting times, and you obey them. Like, that's one of the main things we help guys do, right? Like, you're the master of that, actually, to be fair, dude.
Structural discipline is a good one. Yeah, it's one that I've practiced for a very, very long time. Having those routines in place, having the strategy in place, knowing what needs to be done consistently, having that structure.
You're like, I've learned a lot from you since we've been working together on this. I think that's something I lacked when I first started working with you. I think I'm about 500% better on structural discipline. The third one being expansive discipline. Now, this is something that I've learned a lot from Yassine. Now, expansive discipline is the ability to make the hard decision to grow moment to moment.
Yeah, to choose discomfort rather than comfort.
Yeah.
To
I always
actively choose it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actively choose it. And that's the thing. So I want to I've probably said this before. We say it all the time on the podcast. We've got a theory, is we call it the +1, -1 mindset, is that in any given moment, we're either making a growth decision, an uncomfortable decision, or a comfort or contracted decision. Do I have the hard conversation with my partner? Do I take that risk in the business? Moment to moment, we're faced with that. Now, every time we make a comfort decision, we go to -1. And then we go to from -1 to -2. So what we've got to be able to be very present with is the ability to catch ourselves making comfortable decisions. Because what happens is at the end of the week, when we've made comfort decision after comfort decision, we don't end up in comfort. We end up in psychopathology. Yeah, we end up in actually anxiety, stress, and frustration. So expansive discipline is the ability to choose literally making those more growth-based decisions day to day, moment to moment.
Yeah, well, and you seemed actually talked about this week as well, about how us as humans thrive where we need to flourish, and for us to flourish, it's about always going towards something that's bigger than our current space. So always going towards a goal, like we're goal-orientated creatures. But if we consistently don't push towards the discomfort and don't consistently push towards becoming better versions of ourselves and going towards goals, we creep back into anxiety and depression and stress and unhappiness.
Lack of confidence, yeah. It's like, do you know what? I think what would be good today is to do this is like we'll finish in about 5 minutes, but I think we should do a part 2 on this one, because if you've listened into this so far, because there's already been quite a lot of concepts I think are going to help people, and there's no point in just like giving people loads to think about. I think if you were just to realize that maybe you didn't need confidence and you can create it through self-restraint, that's enough for today. And then what we can do is part 2 on the confidence stuff, because I think it will be beneficial, because I sometimes think giving like a podcast where you can actually think, all right, well, I've got something to go on here, got something to go in action, it's going to be way more helpful. Oh no, not that one.
What was that?
Listen here. We want to be really transparent and share with you one of our impossible goals this year. We want this podcast to be the #1 self-development podcast out there. And guess what? You could really help us. If you're enjoying this conversation we're having and can think of one person, just one person, who may benefit or find this conversation beneficial, hit the share button if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify or any of the podcast distributors, and send it over to them right now. We'd love to have more people just like you benefit from listening to these kind of conversations, as this is what we're really passionate about sharing. Thank you so much for listening. Go hit that share button. Yeah, awesome. So, Pete, I think we should leave it there today, because I think listening in, I think there's some really, really high level concepts that if you were to go and implement in your life after listening today, you would see marked difference. Meaning, if you were to just realize that you don't need to be confident to do all of the things that you've ever wanted to do, you're probably going to feel nervous, anxious, scared, a little insecure. That is life changing, I believe. And equally, if you're looking to become or feel more confident, moment to moment, it's choosing and having the discipline to make the difficult choices. And I think that's pretty freeing. I think that's really, really helpful. If you have listened to this episode, like I said, like feel free to share it, especially with someone who really struggles with their confidence. If you're a guy who's struggling with your confidence, probably because you've been making and breaking promises to yourself, there's a really, really easy way to shift that. Do you want to share anything before we go today, Pete?
No, other than actually, so yes, but like Ben said earlier, he spoke to 150 people over the weekend and was, felt scared and nervous beforehand. And, like the time I stepped on stage in front of hundreds of people, I felt scared. Even in my earlier career days when I was going into pitches, and so I'd pitch in front of 4 or 5 people, I was scared. Like I was really scared about doing that. So, but it is ultimately just keep leaning into it, keep building that muscle.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Like, just keep building the muscle. It's uncomfortable building muscles. There is a document that, a lot of these podcasts we do, there's a document that you can follow along to. Just hit us up on the show notes. We'll put a link in there. It's really, really, there's some exercises in there as well.
Yeah, or join the Facebook group. Like everything that we talk about on this podcast, we do more in the Facebook group.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for listening in today, and we'll see you on the next podcast.